Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also, interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Everybody, it's the Rain Man. I want to give you a quick raindrop on my comments about an email I got from a buddy of mine over the weekend. It was very thought-provoking, and I thought I'd throw it out there in hopes that it might Three, two, one. Hey, everybody, it's the Rain Man. Just want to give you a quick raindrop. I wanted to comment on an email I got from a friend of mine over the weekend. He sent out a picture of downtown Baltimore recently. And what the picture is of a corner of a building, very nice red brick building with some kind of white marble facade. And it looked like at some point it was probably a pretty nice building, but it was covered in graffiti. And one of the things that caught my friend's attention, and this is why he took the picture and sent it out to a bunch of us, was that written inside of the graffiti, kind of stands out really clearly, is the words, "Nothing makes sense anymore." And aside from the urban blight of the graffiti, it seems even that the young people, young inner city kids are having a difficult time understanding what's going on in the world today. And so I thought it was a kind of a interesting way to broach a couple of subjects that have been in the news recently that I think are important and have quite a bit to do with the direction in which our country and our world in general is going. So the email was very thought-provoking, and it got some great responses from some of my friends. But the bottom line for me was our entire world is in a state of change. And as the saying goes, change is the only constant. It seems like everything is changing and nobody knows where it's going to end. So my take on all of that is the old normal is gone, and we're going to be living in a new reality when the dust eventually settles. I have no idea what that's going to look like, and I don't think anybody does. Our shared reality is coming unmoored. What we hold as rock solid is being challenged. This is very uncomfortable for me, and I'm sure it is with a lot of other people. But everybody needs to be thinking about these sorts of things as we watch events unfold in front of our eyes. That piece of graffiti is a cry of frustration and a warning at the same time. What will the new reality look like? That's the big question. My original premise for Rain Man's Take is that you are not getting the truth or even an accurate information from the outlets that used to be so trusted. And if you just read or listen to one side, then you have no idea what's going on. Why is that? Because both sides are bending truth and reality to fit their narratives and motivations. In my view, most of the efforts to remake reality are coming from the left or the current administration and being propagandized by the mainstream media. Distortions of the truth and flat out lies are becoming the norm. And as they get called out, it erodes any remaining trust that we may have in those institutions. And I'll give you some examples here and now. So why do I feel this way? First one is how the mainstream media and the current administration is covering the COVID pandemic and its messaging. And two is the mainstream media and the current administration's messaging around the Senate filibuster procedure. And then three, the cancel culture, and it's damaging the fabric of our society. So first, the mainstream media and the current administration's COVID messaging. This week, Rochelle Walensky, who's the director of the CDC, issued a dark warning yesterday explaining that she is experiencing a recurring feeling of impending doom as the U.S. experiences an uptick in coronavirus cases. All the while, however, red states such as Texas and Florida continue to thrive, besting blue states such as New York in terms of the new cases of COVID. And Director Walensky continues here. She quote, and I quote, "When I first started at the CDC about 2 months ago, I made a promise to you. I would tell you the truth, even if it was not the news you wanted to hear." She continues, "I'm speaking today not necessarily as your CDC director, and not only as your CDC director, but as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter, to ask you to just please hold on a little longer." She continued, referring to the lockdown restrictions proposed by the Biden administration. Also, during that same time frame, Biden had made a speech marking the 1-year anniversary of the coronavirus pandemic, and he said, he potentially warned that the country could have to reinstate restrictions to get back on track if Americans do not stay vigilant and if the conditions change. The problem I see with this is Florida, Texas, and 15 other states have lifted all of their restrictions, and that equates to about 34% of the entire country. So although I haven't checked the other 15 states, Florida and Texas seem to be besting all the Democratic-run states currently under heavy-handed restrictions. And I'm just going to read you some data here from the New York Times as of March 2021. Just using 7-day moving averages from the New York Times, from January 28th to March 28th. In Florida, the cases went down from 10,530 down to 5,094, which is a drop of 52%. In Texas, during that same time period, the cases went down from 17,159 to 4,000 cases, a drop of 76%. So in the last 24 hours, in both of those states, in Florida, the cases, new cases were 4,943 with 36 new deaths, which equates to 0.7% fatality rate. And in Texas, 3,293 in terms of new cases, 51 deaths, which equates to a 1.5% new deaths in that 24-hour period. And then if you take the totals of both those states over the course of the pandemic, approximately 2,040,000 cases in Florida, which brought about 33,177 deaths, and that was about 1.6%. So in all matrices, Florida is in a downward trend. In Texas, 2,780,000 cases, 42,269 deaths. That's 1.5% death rate. And again, since January 28th, Florida and Texas, their numbers have all been decreasing. So what these numbers tell me is two realities exist. These fears of impending doom from the CDC director and the president currently are geared toward the people who are still listening to the mainstream media and the administration, which makes up about 66% of the country. And why are they doing that? Is it to keep them from also leaving and lifting their restrictions? And that number will continue to decrease as far as I'm concerned as states see what's happening in Florida and Texas. The problem is the statistics and science seem to fly in the face of the administration's warnings and the administration's doomsday scenarios. So in my view, two realities exist. These fears of impending doom currently are geared to the people who are still listening to the mainstream media and the administration, which currently amounts to about 66% of the country, in an effort to keep those people from leaving. And that number will continue to decrease as more states start to reopen, in my view. The problem is the statistics and the science seem to fly in the face of the administration's plan and the administration's threat of more cases and increased cases. The administration is going to continue to ratchet up the fear-mongering to maintain that current narrative. This alternate reality reminds me of Baghdad Bob in his press conferences, and I've talked about this in the past, where the PR spokesman for the Iraqi government would put on press conferences as the coalition was encircling Baghdad. And when asked if the coalition was going to make it to the airport, he famously said, no, that we're currently fighting them back. There's no way they're going to do it. And it's almost like you can look out the window and actually see the coalition at the airport. So in one room, there are two completely different realities. And I see this happening with how the mainstream media and our administration is messaging the COVID-19 pandemic. And what I see is that people are no longer going to take the administration seriously. And more people are going to elect that alternate reality as they see other states starting to ease their restrictions and starting to get their economies back to normal. The second example is the mainstream media and the administration's messaging around the Senate filibuster procedure. So first, what is it? Basically, the filibuster is a procedure used by the Senate minority to try and block a vote for as long as possible. As Wikipedia puts it, a filibuster is a parliamentary procedure used in the United States Senate to prevent a measure from being brought to a count. The most common form of filibuster occurs when one or more senators attempts to delay or block a vote on a bill by extending debate on the measure. So this is the filibuster is being threatened currently in the HR 1 debate. And that bill, in my view, is very dangerous because that proposed law is regarding how elections are going to be held in the future. And so the filibuster, in my mind, is very important for the minority to have a full accounting and a full debate on that particular law being debated. So the mainstream media and the administration are trying to connect the filibuster to racism and a relic from the past that has no place in current politics. There's only one problem. Doing some research, you'll find that, as Fox News' John Roberts tweeted on Friday, that after the president denounced the rampant abuse of the filibuster last year, we did some digging and we found out that Republicans used the filibuster once and the Democrats used the filibuster 327 times last year. So Biden, in his first press conference the other day, and I quote here, said, "I was going to give you the statistics, but you probably know them, that it used to be that from between 1917 and 1971, the filibuster existed. There was a total of 58 motions to break a filibuster that whole time. Last year alone, there were five times as many as that. So it is being abused in a gigantic way. By who? Last year, again, the Democrats used the filibuster 327 times and the Republicans used it only once. Again, last year, the Democrats were the minority party. So now that they're in the majority, they want to get rid of it. During an interview on Friday on Fox News primetime, Senator Tim Scott, a Republican from South Carolina, criticized Democrats for claiming the filibuster is racist after they used it last year to block his police reform bill. And as he stated in that interview, that quote, "It was frustrating, irritating moment where the Democrats used the filibuster to block police reform that would have positively impacted disproportionately African-American communities." So it's kind of odd that they are calling the filibuster a racist relic from the Jim Crow era, when last year they used the filibuster to block a proposal by an African-American Republican senator from South Carolina and his proposal for police reform that would have actually helped the African-American community. So it's again, it's alternate realities. It's what they are trying to push out there as fact, when in reality, it's the exact opposite. And finally, the third example I wanted to use was the cancel culture and how it's damaging the fabric of our society. And it's getting to the point where normal, regular people are afraid to voice an opinion because of fear of being canceled or labeled a racist, anti-LGBT, or any other take your pick of negative labels. A recent Harvard CAPS Harris poll has revealed that over 2/3 of Americans believe a growing cancel culture has a direct threat to their freedom. While 36% said they don't believe there is a threat, a whopping 64% said that the phenomena is having a detrimental effect on society. Over half of those surveyed, 54%, also noticed that they fear they can be fired from their jobs if they express their real opinions on matters. Mark Penn, who is the director of the survey, told The Hill, quote, "It's a chilling finding that most people in this country now are afraid they would be fired if they express their real views on social media." Continuing, the public generally gives negative ratings to social media companies and sees the movement as more about censorship rather than trying to correct wrongs. It is a growing national issue. And so we see this in the transgender debate, the Me Too movement, math is racist movement, the BLM movement, current anti-Asian hate crimes, etc. Any opinions that go against any one of those groups' ideologies is considered hatred and should be punished with cancellation, doxing, or even worse. A small, aggressive, and vocal radical minority are currently able to dictate what is acceptable and what is not. And I think that's very troubling. And as this survey showed, most Americans feel the same way. I personally don't think it's okay. As an example, the math is racist argument, or that math is somehow a white supremacist tool to keep minorities down, and that actual real correct answers in a mathematical problem are considered racist. The reality is, in this particular situation, is that the universe is literally guided by mathematics. Math is foundational, not subjective or able to be rearranged because of social inequalities. Man could not do things like go to the moon without foundational mathematical concepts. And the fact that those are being challenged right now, I feel is a very dangerous movement. And just kind of as an aside, historically, math was actually invented in the Middle East thousands of years ago. So the racist idea that math is a form of white supremacy, in my view, doesn't hold any water. But it makes my point that universal truths are being attacked, and soon no one will be able to know what is right and what is the truth. So those were three examples that kind of caught my eye over the last couple of weeks. So I don't know who the person was that kind of getting back to this original picture of nothing makes sense anymore, graffiti on the building. I don't know who this person was who wrote the graffiti in Baltimore, and I probably can't relate to their life experience. What I do know is their city's leadership has failed them for decades. There's a new mayor now, so we'll see if anything happens to change that. However, outside of the city of Baltimore, forces are trying to tear the fabric of America apart. Established realities are becoming confronted, and I think overturning them will have negative outcomes. If that's allowed to happen, I feel the new reality being formed is not going to be good for the vast majority of citizens. My take, the world is going through what authors William Strauss and Neil Howe call in their book, The Fourth Turning. Throughout our history, the world has gone through three turning points where life, as it was known before the event or events, no longer exists, and life changes irreversibly. We're going through those type of world-altering changes right now, and it seemed to have started with the global pandemic as that pivot point. I don't know where this ends, but we'll see what happens. I can only say that I relate to that person's graffiti that he put on the wall, that nothing makes sense anymore. So that's just kind of my take on my buddy's email. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully it sparks some conversation. I will leave it like I always do. If you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. Thanks for watching RAINMAN'S Take, Observations on the World We Live In. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow RAINMAN'S Take on Instagram at RAINMAN'S Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.